Sorry about that. I did it again. I'm learning. Sorry, James and Sandra and Jamie. Oh, man. So, here's the 5-string dulcimer that I was talking about. I've got an extra low bass string on the one that's furthest away from me. So that's the 5-string one. All my best laid plans. This is a Mike Clemmer 5-string that I asked him to let me have an extra low bass string on. Yeah, it's got the wormholes, and he built in his thing, and he put my logo in here when he built it for me. Now going backwards to the 4-string Clemmer band jammer. Whoops, there went my mute. Playing on the Kentucky Music Week train ride once. I'd taken my band jammer because the instructors were asked to come and bring instruments for jamming while we were riding, and I took my instrument, and Robert Force was trying to play and lead, and the train was so loud. It was a steam engine, and he's and I'm playing mine. He says, I bet that's the first time anybody ever said take the mute out of that thing. But this has got the extra slots that I was talking about earlier. I'll go back and show you. But the way that Mike has this one laid out, Talon, do you find you get too much drone and other players feel there isn't enough melody? I'm not sure when I was talking about the bass one. That has to do with what I do with my right hand. If I'm just going to strum everything all the time and have my hand flat going across the strings, it's quite possible to get too much drone. Oh, on the extra string. One of the things that Mike sometimes does is build this to have a double. Well, he's got it slotted so you could move this over and have a middle string here and these doubled melody strings. One of the reasons, the theory is that there are doubled melody strings is so that there be two things with melody, two things with drone, as a way to balance out the tones. But so if I'm going straight across and always strumming everything, I'm going to get a lot of drone. But if I play just a part of it, then I can angle my pick. So if I'm playing my melody and so it has something to do with my technique, with my right hand technique, whether or not I get too much drone and not enough melody. But that's the example of the 4-string band jammer. Now here is I left it in the D, A sharp. Now, with this being an A sharp, between the two middle strings, I have a chromatic relationship, which is what Janita uses in her arrangements that's so beautiful. And it comes from her banjo playing. The wider string spacing. Yes, I have a variety of widths of fretboards, and I do have to get used to them. Gary Galyer's got that kind of thing. His are quite wide too, and my David Myrie does too. I think I just need to warm up on it to remember which instrument I'm on for that. Now this is the one that has all the slots in the nut. You can see there's plenty more slots than there are strings. There's only 4 pegs, 4 strings, but in the slots there's a lot of options. And when I first built mine, they said you could do this. You can give yourself options so that it could be 4 equidistant strings. And as I was talking about Jean Ritchie, who said that she would play it with the bottom 3 always 1, 5, 8. That lets me play on the melody string like I would be playing D-A-A, but I'm reaching across the high ringing string to play typical D-A-A harmonies on the string that's between the high ringing D and the low D. And Thomasina Levy is one of the people who uses this kind of a tuning also for accompanying her singing. The thing I like on the Bandjammer is having that high ringing D that can approximate the high G on a banjo. Now the dulcimer I was just playing is tuned to G because gingers were built to really ring and be alive in that key. Now this is my Schnaufer 6-string. This one is a signature model that McSpadden designed with David Schnaufer specifications. It's one of his. He has a special that's his the 4-string, usually laid out in the 3-string pattern, or this 6-string. Robert Force and Alda Shea played in Robert still does. Al has passed, but they play in a 6-string style like this. They had a different, like on a 12-string, there are doubled strings. So the high melody strings are doubled. The middle strings are doubled. And in the bass, you can either, and this is where Al and Robert were different. I believe Robert just had a doubled bass string, and Al had an octave higher D. So it's the same pitch. Yes. Similar to a 12-string guitar where the bottom 4 strings are octaves and the top 2 strings are doubled. So when I'm playing, that's like playing across the strings. And there's some beautiful chorused kind of sounds that come from this kind of a layout. And there's sometimes a lack of clarity. Let's look here. Because when I'm playing 3 individual strings or 2 strings that are individual plus a double string, there's a certain separation between all of them. But when I play with this, there's a fullness to the sound. Now, if I was to play that on an instrument that doesn't have, I'm going to use my band jammer right now, it's going to have a qualitative sound difference as well. Had that high ringing sound, which made it feel more banjo-like. Now let's go and do, now this is a nylon string, so it's going to also sound different. There's an openness and space between the tones. So that's one of those things to take into consideration. Now, the Galax style is, by design, a 4-string style, equidistant. The difference here is, even though these are equidistant strings, because it's a noter style way of playing, and all the strings are tuned to the same pitch. That was Boatman, Doug. Yeah, good ear. And this is like, because everything is the same pitch and they're all tuned with a very small string, it's the high D or whatever I'd make a match to, I'm hearing the drone is not so far away. It's not an octave away. It's only like a fifth away, sixth and fifth and sixth and fifth, sixth and fifth, 2, 3, 2 and 0, or 1 and 0. And I don't have those notes that go below do, but because I'm using this feather quill, which is very light, the strings are light, and I'm covering 2 of the strings, it's not so hard, even though there's that buzzing like a bee. That always is a summer sound to me, but that the drone that is there doesn't overpower the melody. And so by covering 2 strings, I'm giving myself not only a more stable playing field for where my noter is, if I play with a noter on a single string, my noter tends to rock a little bit. And every time I want to cross where a fret is, if I'm a little bit off level, my noter is going to bang into the frets, and I'm going to hear a lot of extraneous noise. But by covering 2 strings, my noter skates over the top of them. Now, there's one other that I want to call attention to that is a more than 3-string thing, and that's my dulcibro. And the dulcibro can be laid out. This is a resonator dulcimer. Dulcibro is the name that Don Neuhauser uses for the ones that he built. This has got a full quarterman cone like a guitar, so you can see that the shape is a bit more generous than other dulcimers. But this is laid out equidistant with the strings raised. With that nut raiser, you can see there's a lot of space between the string and the fretboard. So I'm not actually using any of the frets. I'm not touching them. My slide is the thing that touches. And I'm tuned to an open chord so that I can get that, and I can get the intervals. As I use my finger picks and pick across, I can skip strings and get all these different intervals. And the open chord gives me the ability to play whatever I want to play. I can also play in between the frets and get all the half steps. I think you're talking about the 6-string one, Talon. And your question is, because they're different sizes, wouldn't one be heavy and the other melody size? Correct. And wouldn't you end up playing just one because of the different levels? Because one's thick and one's thinner, and as your pick goes across, wouldn't you just hear one or the other? And it is possible to play in a way where that happens. And so one of the other things Robert talks about in Robert Force, and how he and Al Shea would string and play, is that Al had the high melody string. So if I come across on an in strum, I hear both notes. Some people reverse it so the low string is on the outside, and I think then sometimes it's a little easier to not quite hear the inside string. Because as I go across, even if I try to angle my pick and skate across, it's going to go a little bit up and down. If I'd have a camera pointing toward my pick, I could see that even though this is a fixed thing and the strings are flexible, that there's going to be some up and down as I get across there. Just as you can watch your hand as they're going across. So it's not like I'm going to lose that other string. Now, you can play just fine with just 3 strings. I think Shelley Stevens from Ohio had a book that she did a bunch of classical arrangements for the mountain dulcimer on 3 strings, and she called it 3-string orchestra. And I think there was somebody else that had a book called 3-string choir. Just looking at what are all the possibilities of playing on 3 strings or a 3-string configuration. But, there's all these other things out there, and I just wanted to provide an overview and a little bit of explanation about how they're typically used and the ways I use them. And just like Jamie's saying, she's drooling just a little bit about the Dulcibro. Of course, it's lovely. I do want to let's see if that's pointing where it's supposed to go. It's not going there yet. If I go to If this works. Oh, none of that's working right now because there needs to be a launch. But I'm also playing planning and hosting a Resonator Dulcimer Day of workshops on March 12th. So that's going to be coming up. The everything's being configured in the backdrop. Fingering can be harder with different sizes of the bass on the 5 or the 6 string. The fingering is more getting used to more than one string. I think that's what I'm going to say. If I'm playing this and I have this much deeper, thicker bass string, one of the things that happens is the biggest thing is I've got 4 strings, and if I'm used to playing 3 and now I have 4 equidistant strings, that's the biggest challenge for fingering. The next thing is, it has a little more tension, and it's like walking on a garden hose, barefoot. Well, if I'm yes, it is thicker, but it's such a small difference. It doesn't really create a. It doesn't bother me. It's thicker and it's got a little more resistance. So I just have to adjust. Now, if I want to have them all be the same size, that's a Galax instrument. Thank you for your questions and your interaction today. Are there? And I'm apologizing. I keep thinking I've figured out some of this stuff, and I have. But obviously, the application of what we're talking about can be the thing that's not clear. So, extra strings. How do we use them? You may say, I don't. I don't want to, and that's perfectly fine. But if you do want to explore those things, there are several of us around who have done that and can be your accompanying guide if you so want to do that. I don't know if there are any equidistant string classes in Quarantune this time. The registration for Quarantune ends this Saturday, and if you're interested, there are several openings in a lot of the workshops. Some of them have closed, but there are several that still have some opening. That's the workshop page. Click on registration to register. You can also see when you do that how many workshops have just a few in them. If you're someone who likes to have more one-to-one sessions, um, I would look for something that has several available. Um, some of them are sold out, some of them are close to sold out. And some don't have that many. So I would encourage you to do that. And that festival takes place not this weekend, but the following weekend. And let's see, are there any other announcements? Coming up next month, we had a great workshop with Mark Allen Wade last week on arranging and a lot of different things, the tools he uses when he's arranging. And he was leading us through O'Carolyn tune, Planksty Irwin. And that is on our website in the past live events section for mentor and workshop members. Coming up next month, Don Petty will be here to lead us through some songs of love from Appalachia. And we laughed when we were talking about planning this. It's right before Valentine's, and there's a lot of times the songs in Appalachia end up with somebody not coming back from the river, but he said he guaranteed there would be some tunes that would have a happy ending. So that's coming up in February 10th. So that's not too far away. Yes, you could certainly do that, Doug. It's available when you can do that. I am heading out now, and I'm going to wish you well, and look forward to seeing you next week. As always, I'm glad to see you here, Jim. Thinking of the banks of Ohio, yes. You know, the famous Ohio folk tune doesn't end well for everyone involved. But if you have extra ideas for what you'd like to, questions that you'd like to have an answer to, or something you'd like explored, please write them, or you can put them here. You can send them to me, steve@dulcimercrossing.com, and we'll get them into the hopper. So for now, I'm just going to say farewell.